All right. So first of all, thank you, Raj, and everybody, and all the attendees who are staying late and for the FinOps Summit. I'll talk a little bit about myself. So my name is Sukrut Parab. I'm a technical solution architect at carparts.com and a business applications MVP since 2019. Uh, I live in Los Angeles with my family and been working with Dynamics 365 and previously AX since last more than 12 years. I'm active member of Dynamics community, so you can find me over there. I regularly do blogging and involved in answering questions on Microsoft Dynamics community. You can find me on Twitter as you have my email address over here if you want to contact me through email, or you can contact me through LinkedIn as well. So, terms of agenda, we'll talk about electronic reporting concept, components of electronic reporting, how we can create data model, mapping, and format creations. We'll talk about the configurable business document, demo of how we can create a configurable business document from using a plain Word document or using Word templates, and how to create a custom design or design a report using Word template. We'll see a little bit about challenges which we face when we walk through the or try to modify the Excel templates as well. So first, why ER, electronic reporting? The electronic reporting, the session is all about the configurable business documents and designing how to design reports in using Word templates for configurable business documents. But for configurable business document, electronic reporting is the base. So if you don't understand electronic reporting concepts, it's very difficult to work with configurable business documents. So first, let's look at what is electronic reporting. So electronic reporting is a tool which you can use to configure different formats, according to the legal requirements, depending on the countries or regions. So it can be any government bodies, right, like banks or any other parties. You can, the purpose of ER is definitely any end user can go and configure their formats, but I would say if you have added knowledge of underlying data structure, how the tables and how table relations works within D365, how the data is stored within the tables in D365, then you have an added advantage. Once you know and understand the concept how the electronic reporting works, the process of creating or adjusting any existing format is much easier and faster, you can it gives us a great flexibility to adapt to a new legal requirements. Also, using the electronic reporting or configurable business documents, now the creation of custom reports based on the original configurations is very easy. So what are the components of ER, electronic reporting? So there are three main components for electronic reporting. The first one is data model. The second one is model mapping, and the third one is format configuration. So what is data model? Data model is nothing but the representation of a data structure. So for example, it can be any business domain, for example, invoices, customer address, company related informations, or purchase related information. So the data model defines the tree structure with necessary data fields which are required by a particular business domain. What model mapping does is the model mapping links the data model elements with model mapping links the data model elements with underlying uh, data model. So you can model mapping does the configuration. Model mapping does the part of fetching the data at runtime and provide it to your data model. So the model mapping and finally the data model is mapped to your format configurations, wherein you can finally the format configurations displays the data to the end user. So we'll go to the demos and we'll see these are maybe a little bit confusing, but when we go to the demo, we'll see how the data model mapping can be done. So the components of data model. So as you can see on the left hand side, the customer invoice info. This is the custom data model which I created over here, which has on the left hand side you can see the data structure where it displays the customer account number, email, first name, last name, and phone for the customer. The invoice line, which is a repeatable data structure for this reusable data structure for this model, and the information about postal address. So we can create reusable data structures within this invoice within the data model, which can be mapped to the underlying tables or any calculated fields, and you can display the data. This is how the model mapping looks like. So you can map your data model with the help of data model mapping designer to the underlying tables. So for example, in this scenario, I'm just taking the example of showing the sales order related information, sales order invoice related information, which includes the customer, the invoice number, customer's details, the invoice line details, and few things. This is just an example to show the technology, and when we go into the demo, I'll show you how to create a data model, how you can create a model mapping, custom model mapping, and how you can design map that model mapping with the format, how you can create a format and finally map that format with the model mapping. So what are some advantages of electronic reporting? So most of the things are, you have to do it from UI. You don't have to. Microsoft has provided us with the number of configurations, more than 2,500 configurations, which are provided and which are distributed through LCS. So nothing exists in Dynamics 365 FNO in ER workspace. You have to pull those configurations from LCS. After that, pulling those configurations in your configuration provider, you can start working on those configurations or modifying those configurations in your own configuration provider. Most of these electronic reports are, you can write a formula. It's like writing a formula, Excel-based, like write a formula in Excel. You can write formula to use any data transformations. Mostly the ER is the foundation for configurable business documents. So we go into the configurable business documents demo, we'll see about how the configurable underlying ER models and mapping configuration helps to design those configurations using Word or Excel. Another thing is, all changes are done through the D365 UI. You don't have to go to the Visual Studio or any development tool to design your reports, unless you have some. There are options wherein you can go to the Visual Studio and modify for the customized field. You can modify you can add your own fields. You can modify the underlying data provider classes to point those fields to a different data points. That can be done, but it's really doesn't. You really don't have to do that unless the requirements are critical. So let's jump into the demo of how to create data model, model mapping, and create a format. So everything starts with the through the electronic reporting workspace. So we have electronic reporting workspace, which you can find it from the normal workspace. When you go to the workspace, and you can open the electronic reporting workspace. So in the electronic reporting workspace, you will, by default, you'll find Microsoft configuration provider. Within this configuration provider, so what this configuration provider is? The configuration provider has with the help of configuration provider, you can pull in whatever configurations you need from LCS, and you can start modifying those configurations. With the Microsoft configuration provider, you cannot modify any of the Microsoft configurations. So your first thing is, while starting working with electronic reporting, is creating your own configuration provider, and which you can do it from here. So it's just creating a new record with your name, configuration provider name, and the internet address, and that should be the that should do it. After that, once you create your configuration provider, you can set it as a default configuration provider, set as an active, so that whatever configurations you are going to pull or import are going to be there in your own configuration provider repositories. So once we have this configuration provider, then you can click on the repositories and connect your configuration provider. You can click on the reporting configurations, and you can see you have to first pull these configurations from LCS. So first you're going to do is create a repository, and in repository you are going to connect to your LCS project so that you can pull those configurations. After we create these configurations, pull these configurations, right now you can go to reporting configurations, and you should be able to see all the standard models which are provided by Microsoft in your repository. So by default, you can see the configuration provider is Microsoft over here. But once you, for example, if I want to create or extend my own model, because you have your own configuration provider as active configuration provider now, once you click create configuration, you should be able to see your configuration provider over here. So let's start creating a new data model, which will show us information, where I'll show how to create XML file output for a specific invoice or specific sales order related invoice, and how we can design that data model. So first of all, you're going to create a new, click on the create configurations, wherein you can write your name for your data model. So I'll just create my customer invoice as a data model. Once you create this data model, you can see the configurations of provider is automatically set to my own configuration provider, which I created in my environment. Now to how we can design this data model, my customer invoice data model. So for that, you can go to the designer, and this is where you design your data model. If you want to look at the standard data model, let's take a look at first standard data model, how it looks like, and then design our own model, and where I'll explain how you can create your own model. So you can filter whichever model you want to look at. For example, invoice model or payment model. If I want to look at the payment model, you can just search on the payment model, and you can see, click on the designers to see how Microsoft designed this payment model. So once this open, you can see there are different different model roots where Microsoft has defined their field structure. For example, if you want to look at the company info, these fields, you can see the company phone, company email, company related information is these fields are going to hold the information for all the company related data. Similarly for payments, payment method type, payment type, they have created different nodes. The reason behind creating these different nodes is some of these nodes are reusable data structures which will be used within some of these nodes. So we'll show you how to create these data structures first. So this data structure is nothing but you are defining your model which you will be using in your reports, which you will be using in your reports. If you correlate this with SSRS reports, you can say this is my temporary table. The data model mapping is my data provider class, where I'll be filling the data in my temporary table, and format configuration is the final SSRS report design. So let's go ahead and start creating this data model. So first I'll create the customer info as my root. I will start adding the new fields in this node as maybe first is customer account number. So let's create customer account number. I would like to take customer name, customer email. By the way, you have a different data types which you can set for different fields. So for your data structure, which you are designing while designing your data model, you can select for date, time, enum, record list. These are different types which are available when you create your data model. So let's add email. For customer, I want I'll create another root. I want customer, while displaying information about invoice, I want to have customer address as well. So I'll create another root as postal address. And within this postal address, I'll start adding as a child elements as city, street, the entire address field, let's add one more field for state and zip code, and let's add two more fields for state and zip code. So now this is my postal address for which is going to display information about customer's address. And now I want to display this particular for each invoice. I want to show customer information as well as postal address related information. So in this base model, I'll add another root which is going to be of type record, and it's going to show postal address, because the postal address is the address information is stored in different table other than customer related information. So it's a different record for each invoice where I'll show customer informations, and I'll add this as a record. Now, what reusable data structures? This is where the reusable data structures are going to be helpful. So what you can do is, once you create this postal address, you can click on this on the right hand side. You can see the properties, different properties for this node. What you can do is you can click on the switch item reference and refer your postal address root which you created, which holds the information about customer address, and click OK. That will give you information about the customer's postal address. Now I want, along with this postal address, I want invoice related information as well. So I'll display for a particular invoice sales order, I will display customer information, what customer, for which customer I generated this invoice, what is the postal address, what are the invoice lines for this that particular sales order. So what I can do is I'm going to add another node called as invoice lines, and it's going to be a type of record list. You can have multiple invoice lines. So I'm going to add this as a type with a type of record list and add. In this invoice lines, so I'm going to add maybe a couple of fields to display the data. For example, I want to show item ID. Let's pick invoice amount, line amount. And let's have invoice date. Now I think I created this within this node. So let me delete it quickly and go to the base node and created the model root. Within this, let's create item ID again. Another field as amount. All right, so now I want to display this information as as a XML node. We'll try to create as a XML format. So I will create this within my base customer invoice node as invoice lines, and it's going to be a type of record list here, and I'll reference this with the node which I created for invoice lines. So it's going to display now within this one customer, this model, I'm going to display information about customer for a particular sales order, invoice lines, and postal address. Once this is done, you can save your data model. So this is just an example, small example which I want to demonstrate, just to show or demonstrate about how the technology or data model can be designed using this designer. Once this data model is designed, you can map this data model to the data source. So to do that, you can select the data model which you created, which is customer info, save this, and you get to design this on this page. You can, on this model mapping designer, you can now design or add or map this data structure to the underlying data sources. So as you can see on the left hand side, different data sources are available for mapping your data model to the underlying data sources which are present. So you have class, you have enumerations, number sequence, table records directly. So what we are going to do in this scenario is we'll select as we are going to, most of this information can be found in sales order related information can be found in customer invoice share and customer invoice trans table. So we'll select this as a table records and add root for the data sources. So, and over here we can select customer invoice JER as our table. We'll name it as a customer invoice JER table. You can use, if you select this checkbox cross company, you should be able to select data from multiple companies as well. So there are some settings which you can utilize while creating your data models. So click OK. As soon as you do this, you should be able to see the customer invoice table, its related table over here, and all the display methods or methods which are returning the records within this customer invoice table. So along with the customer invoice table, what I would like to do is add another table which is called as customer invoice trans to display the line information. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select that as a calculated field and click add. So that's a predefined field which I have with the formula, which I'm going to fetch the records from formula, and I'll show you the formula as well, how we are going to fetch those records. So with the help of this formula designer, you can write different functions to fetch the records. So you can see on the right hand side, different functions are available to fetch the data. You can do order by, you can do sort, you can do sum if it is required, and different functions are available. And at the in my presentation, I have links for all these formulas and functions where you can find those on doc site. So right now, what we are going to do is we are going to order by this customer line record from the cust invoice trans. So as you can see here, we are going. What I'm doing is through the relations on the customer invoice table. So this at represents the customer invoice table. Through these relations, I'm fetching the customer invoice trans records, which are ordered by customer invoice trans line creation sequence number field. So let me save this. And once you close this and hit OK, you should be able to see the customer invoice trans record, customer invoice trans as a data source in your data model. Now, once this is done, the next thing is doing mapping our data model, which we created with our data sources. So in order to do that, for example, this customer account number field, I know from the customer invoice table, the field which I'm going to map is order account. So you can use to easily filter out the fields. You can find out using the browser functionalities, search functionalities to find out what fields you want to map to. So this customer account, I'm going to map to my customer account. So now my model mapping knows from where I need to pull the data. So for account number field, I'm pulling data from customer invoice order account field. For customer email, now for the customer, as I said earlier, when you add any data source in over here in the designer, it automatically copies the relations for that particular table. So if you see in Visual Studio for customer invoice table, and if you go to relations node, all these tables are present in relation node for this customer invoice table. So all those relations are visible to you over here on the UI. So because I know customer invoice table relates to my customer table, so I can just go into the relations node over here, and you can find the customer table. So let me see where my customer table is. Oh, it's over here. So customer groups, here it is, cust table. So from the cust table, I can just find out an email field from cust table and just or method from the cust table, and I can directly map it to the email. Similarly, for the customer postal address, we can go ahead and do the same things, wherein we can map the postal address, customer postal address field, map these fields to our invoice. So I already have this this kind of data model and mapping created, which I'll show you, which already exists in my repository. So just to save the time, so let me remove this filter. And if I go to this customer, ASP customer, and designer, this is my model which I created. This is my model mapping which I shown you earlier. And in the designer, you can see I have already created this customer invoice mapping with and the lines mapping with my data model. So as you can see, the phone and all these informations are coming through the relations. The invoice line information is coming through the customer invoice trans table, which I added over here, and rest of the fields are mapped for those item ID, invoice date, and amount. These fields are mapped to the customer invoice table. So now, once we design this data model and data model mapping, the next step is designing the format. So to design the new format, the next step is you go to your base model and create configurations and create your new format based on your data model, which is your ASP customer. So in my scenario, it's ASP customer. So I already created this invoice by customer as a format wherein I selected my file as an XML file. So I want to generate XML file. So when you do add root and while designing this format, when you create a new format, there you get the option whether you want it as a Excel, Word, XML, you want JSON, or different kinds of formats are available over there. So let me quickly create one new format and show you all those options. Test format. If you go to test format and in the designer for this format, and you create new, oops, I think I created model instead of format. So let me create. So I selected my model again, create configurations and format based on my data model. So I'll create test invoice format. You can select format type Excel, JSON, PDF, text, Word, or XML. So if you select Word or Excel, you should be able to design your reports using Word or Excel. In this scenario, just to demonstrate, I'll select XML, and you can select your data model version. So I'll select as version 2 and your model definition, model mapping, which we created, and you create this format. So once you create this format, you should be able to design your format. So I'll just go to my existing format which I designed. So it's XML, and these are the XML element. You can add elements in your XML using this add button, wherein you can select XML element, and then within those XML element you can create your fields, which are you get the option to choose string, date, time, different kind of fields. So within this element, I selected this account number as my field. So, and here are some properties for this field, which is defined as string. While creating these fields, you get to select what kind of data type you want for these fields. So once you create this format, there is another mapping which is called as format mapping, wherein we are going to define map this format to our data model. So as you can see, my account number field is now mapped to my data model account number field. Similarly, for invoice lines, my item ID, invoice date, all these fields are mapped to this invoice line data model fields which I created. Once you do this, you are ready to test your format, and you can do validations from here, and you can run your format from here. So let's run this format and see how this looks like. So in this scenario, I choose a sales order which I already invoice, which is 723. So once I click this, you should be able to verify your format, whether my format is pulling data properly or not. So if I open this, now you can see it's pulling the data for customer account, customer name. Email field is not pulling because maybe I didn't map it. It pulls the address and the invoice line. So it has one line with this item, with this date, and all these things, data can be formatted using functions. Right now it's not formatted. So that's why you see year first and month and the date. So that's how you can you can validate your formats. So any questions so far before I jump into the configurable business documents, where I'll show how to create documents using Word templates?
There is one question by Cull, who's asking, how do you create a header and footer on the electronic report output? For example, on a bank output file, the footer contains details about the number of payment lines.
So yeah, I'll show that. I'll answer these questions after showing probably configurable business document, because in configurable business documents, will show you the standard design where you can see your header and footer informations, and how you can display those numbers.
Thanks.
So we'll jump to the configurable business documents scenario now, wherein I'll show you about a configurable business document, how you can create those using Word or Excel templates, and what are configurable business document first. So the configurable business documents are nothing but the electronic report configurations, which we just now created. It can be a for configuration business documents, the format you can use are Excel and Word right now. And you can, so the configuration business document is nothing but the electronic reporting configurations along with the template. So what happens when you what happens when you run this configurable business document is the underlying framework uses data model mapping and format mapping, which we just saw. So what it does is it tries, whenever user pulls any report, for example, free text invoice report or payment advice report, what it does is it just pulls the information using data model and put it into the template and displays it to the user. So the same SSRS pipeline runs when you it's the configurable business document can be used along with the same functionality what we have currently in the print management functionality. So once you create your configurable business document, you can use the print management setting to define your own format, and the standard SSRS reports will be replaced by the configurable business documents. So to start with the configurable business document, first of all, there are two prerequisites which are required. Is first one is you have to enable the configurable business documents from feature management. So once you go to the feature management, you can filter on business document and enable those if those are not enabled, which should give you a workspace with the name configurable business document management. So for example, if I go to the not enabled tab over here and filter by feature name, which contains business, you should be able to, sorry, I'll go to the all because this is already enabled in my environment. So as you can see, the business document management, you have to enable this. Once you enable this, the new workspace, which is called as business document management should be available for you in your environment, wherein you can see all the out of the box templates and reports available in the Word or Excel format. The second prerequisite for the business configurable for management is you should have your own own configuration provider, which we saw during the first step. Is you should have your own configuration provider. Once you have all these two things, you should be able to create your own reports or replace existing reports which are provided by Microsoft using the electronic reporting workspace. So in this particular scenario, we'll take an example of free text invoice. So let's first look at the demo, and then we'll jump into the how you create those reports. So let me go to the first of all in accounts receivable and show you the print management settings. So in the print management settings for, sorry, I had to go to the form setup. And on the form setup, you can go to the print management. And in our scenario, I'm taking example of free text invoice. So I'll show you what are the all options available for free text invoice. So in this print management setting, you can see over here there are different free text invoice options available. Once you enable configurable document management, you should be able to see all the standard template available for you within this print management setting. So right now I have this is the free text invoice report, which is a standard SSRS report, and this is the new invoice which I created using a Word template. So so I have for all free text invoice currently I'm using my own Word template. So let's go to the free text invoice and see how that looks like. So you can open the free text invoice. 1 second. So yeah, so this is my free text invoice screen, wherein I already created one free text invoice and posted the free text invoice, which this is demo data. So I'm going to print this free text invoice and show you how the free text invoice looks like. So right now, while executing this print option, it shows the free text invoice.report, which is standard report. I don't know why this message is showing report, but the end output we are going to see is the report in Word format. So because I have my own custom format set up in the print management, as soon as I open this, you should be able to see this custom report format. So now you can see I have added my own fields, I added my own header, I added my own footer to this and designed these reports. So once you have, if most of the things for invoice related things or payment related data models for check as well, these data models are already provided by Microsoft and mapped to model mapping is already provided. Until and unless you have a critical requirement, you don't have to really change these data models. So now let's see how you can design this particular invoice using Word template. For that, first thing what I have to do is, in my electronic reporting workspace, once I go to my electronic reporting workspace and my configuration provider, you can see the standard invoice model. So using the standard invoice model, I created, because we cannot modify anything in standard invoice model, I created my own model, which is derived using the standard invoice model in my own configuration provider. In this model, we have standard free text invoice, which is in Excel format provided by Microsoft. For most of the reports now, Microsoft is continuously improving and providing Word templates, because the challenges with Excel templates are those are a little hard to modify because of the merged cells. Until and unless you unmerge those cells from your Excel and put your fields, you cannot easily modify the standard Excel reports. So what I did is, for this free text Excel invoice report, I created a new configurations, which is derived from my free text invoice report, Excel report, with my name called as ASP free text invoice. So once you create these configurations, you can go to the designer, and in the designer, you should be able to see the standard report format for the free text invoice. So you can see here the format is, you can create your own format as similar to this format, where you define header, footer, totals, and all the data you want to display in your templates. So when you create this format, in the attachment sections, you can find, initially when you create new configurations, you will find the Excel template. So let's go ahead and create quickly create a new format, which is derived from standard Excel template. So FinOps free text invoice, which is going to use my invoice model because I'm using the standard model, or you can choose your own model. I'm going to use my own model because I did some changes over there. You can select the version for this model and the model mappings, which is invoice customer, and create this configuration. So once you create this configuration, you can go to this configuration designer, and what you are going to find is in the attachment, you have a Excel format, which is out of the box format provided by Microsoft. Now, if you want to replace this Excel format using your own Word template, what you can do is just delete this template, go to Microsoft, open Microsoft Word, create your blank document. One thing you have to make sure in your environment is when after in the Word settings in options, you have your in display, on display or in advanced customize ribbon, you should have your developer checkbox enabled, so that you should be able to design and copy the XML schema from D365 in your templates. So what you can do is just simply save this as this plain Word document as a new template. So my free text invoice. Once you save this template, you can go back to your designer, create a new record as file, and you can select this template. Before this, let me close this file. So right now I have my blank template over here. I'll save this template and go back to my designer and select this template as over here. As soon as you save this template, and the format which you design over here, this schema, this structure will be copied in your Word template. So you can go to attachment again, just open this, which will download this template for you, and you can open this template. Once I enable this editing and I go to this developer tab, select XML mode mapping, and you should be able to see this report in your blank Word document. Now you have exact same format which we design or Microsoft has provided in your Word document. Now you should be aware of, now everything is done from the D365 perspective. Now you should be aware about mostly to design your report is all about your Word skills. So if you are, I'm not an expert in Word, but just to while working on this requirement, I learned most of the things about Word is how you can design these templates. So let me show you how I created this template quickly. So this is my template for the free text invoice. So this is my template for the free text invoice. So when you go to the developer and in design mode, you should be able to see how this template is designed. So if you click on this particular invoice, you can see over here the header, I inserted my own image, and from the developer design pane, from this report node, most of the fields are pulled over here from this report node. So these are simple design, wherein what you can do is this particular here I want to display a label for this particular label and free text invoice related information in this particular section. So in this section, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my header and see document details, wherein you have all your invoice label and number, all this information is present. So now how you can display this information is up to you. You can use standard word tables to display your information in tabular manner. So right now, if you look at this example of retext invoice, which I generated, generated, these exactly fields are printed using this the XML or format mapping you have in your D365. So to create this, so for example, the header is very simple. This is the hard coded text as invoice. You can take it from the report header as well, the report title. In this my scenario, I just hard coded it. This image is inserted using a simple picture from my computer. These fields, phone, email, and fax are mapped to the company information, which pulls in from the company. So because our underlying format has mapped to our data model, and data model is mapped through model mapping to the underlying data sources, automatically when you generate these templates, what system is going to do is system is going to put all these values for these fields into your template at runtime. So to design this, what we can do is you can simply so right now the section which I am displaying over here is nothing but a table in Word. So let me show you the hidden part for this one. So if you go to the borders and show all and click OK, you will see I created this as a table with 3 columns, wherein in first column I am displaying all the labels, and I'm displaying the values for those labels in this section. The spacing and everything, you can definitely go over here in developer node and click properties, and you can show the spacing and all the things for your table. Or you can click on table properties as well, and you can reduce the spacing while designing your Word template. Once this is done, you create your table. If you want to insert this particular document invoice label field, what you can do is you can go to the sections which you want to insert and click on this and insert your map control and click on the plain text, which should insert that particular field over here. And you are done. You don't have to do anything else. You can just name this field using properties here, saying this is my invoice label, and the system, when you upload it again and to your design templates in document attachments, the system will replace this value with the label for this particular field. Similarly, you can go ahead and do things for different fields. So it's up to you how you are going to design your document. So this is about this particular sections. Now, another important thing is how you define, how you display your repetitive data, for example, invoice lines. So for that also I have created this table. This is nothing but a table which is a standard Word table. All this coloring is nothing but the Word functionalities, wherein you can put in whatever color you want in this for this table. This is nothing but also a table with multiple columns. So let me quickly show you its border and properties. So you can see this is a table with 4 columns, wherein I have defined the header for my tables. Now, if you want to display the repetitive data within this table, this particular structure which got copied in our Word template gives you that ability where you can map your content. Because the invoice line we selected as record list, you can map this repeating lines section to this particular table, and once you insert those fields from that particular section, you don't have to worry about anything at the runtime. Because we are mapping this repeating section in our table at runtime, if you have hundreds of lines in your invoice, those lines will be displayed in this tabular format in your report. So this is a little bit the complex example which I took, but if you look at the standard formats, those are more complex than this. But with the Word, you get the flexibility to do these changes easily. You don't have to deal with the issues which you face with the Excel, wherein you have to unmerge the cells first from the standard template and then merge those cells back again. So Excel has its own challenges, which stops you from doing, which is not that flexible compared to Word, at least from my opinion. So the Word gives you that flexibility wherein you can design these formats however you want. It's the designing is not that complex. Once you are familiar with how to design these Word documents, it should be very simple to design these documents, and you don't need any customizations or anything for these kind of generating these kind of reports. Now, once I design my main report sections, you have another section which is footer. So you can, right now this is a hard-coded text in footer, and here I'm displaying the company address value, which is coming from in this header section wherein we have company address address field, which is mapped to underlying company info table. So if you have to answer the first questions, if you have your page number or all the logic, which you can have a calculated field as well in your model, then you can display those fields over here. And because you are going to do as a calculated field, or you are going to write functional in electronic designer, the values should be displayed over there in this footer. So this is about configuration business documents and how to design those. I'll show you how another template which I created for customer payment, vendor payment advice, which is relatively simple than the free text invoice. So this is the simple vendor payment advice, which you print whenever you paste a vendor, post a vendor payment journal and print a payment advice from there. So this is currently not mapped in my system, but this is also fairly simple, wherein you can just insert your header, footer details, and create your template according to your customer needs. So with that, I'll conclude my session on how to create these templates. Few tips which I would like to share on specifically for address fields is when you have to be a little bit careful when you put these address fields in your templates. So for example, this customer address value, because address can be multiple lines. So when you go to this developer tab and select properties for address fields, you have to make sure allow carriage returns while designing these templates, so that you get your address fields in a proper way like this. Right now, I'm showing this as a Word document, but electronic reporting workspace gives you a flexibility to have this in PDF as well. So if I go to the electronic reporting workspace, what you can do is you can go to the electronic reporting. So let's look at the first of all, electronic reporting destinations. What are destinations are provided right now? I created this new destination for free text invoice, and I just selected in the settings. In the settings, I selected this as a screen. You can email it, you can send it as a file, you have different options. You can send it as a file, you have archive options and Power BI as well. So right now I enable it as a screen. So that's why you see it on the screen. You have another option to convert this document from Word to PDF as well. So it is somewhere electronic reporting source, I think. Yeah, once you create this record over here, you can there is one setting wherein you can, I think that is another feature which is maybe not enabled in my environment, but you just have to create a record and say enable the checkbox which which can convert this Word document to PDF file. So those are all settings, and you can find those different most of the things related to these configurations on the standard documentation. So I have some references over here on my in my slides, which will specifically this link, which we want to learn how I design these templates specifically for words. You can visit these links, which shows about how you can design your Word documents using electronic reporting and configurable business document. So with that, I'll conclude my session. If you have any questions.
Thank you for that, Sukrut. Yeah, so there are a few questions in the chat. I'm sure you've covered some of them already. So I know that you covered the part with Cole's question on the header and footer. So if we move past that one, Jai Prakash has asked, how can we customize changes between environments apart from doing manually downloading and uploading? Basically, I think he means, how do we deploy these changes across environments, basically?
So yeah, you can deploy these configurations in different environments through LCS. You're right, Jai Prakash, you mentioned one of the way for doing that is manually downloading these configurations using XML as a XML file. So if you go over here in the electronic reporting configurations, you can download this your model and everything as you can either export this, because you can only export only the completed versions. So you can export this as an XML file and upload it. That is one way, as you said, manually, and another way is through the LCS. So in the standard documentation, you should be able to find the steps for distributing these configurations within the environment through the LCS.
Thanks. And the next question is by Sudnik, who's asking, I downloaded electronic reports for ISO 222, data model mapping and format. I didn't know how to check which exactly the data model mapping is using for specific format. There were a few model mappings. Is there any possibility to check it in an easy way? I understand that XML mapping is the Word doc is taken from a format in GER.
So to answer your question, you can, once you select your model and go to the designer, let me open this designer and quickly show you how to find which mapping it belongs to, and go to map to model data source. Sorry, not over here. I'll have to go to my pretext invoice. Designer. So if you see in your designer, for example, this particular example for invoice lines, the invoice lines values are coming through the see model.line item. So if you go to this model and if you click on this edit formula over here, you should be able to see in model, you can see most of the invoice lines are going to come from invoice base. So if you go to this in your model, if you go to the invoice base and check the invoice mapping for that particular data model, you should be able to find out where this base invoice is mapped to, from where the data is coming. So in this particular scenario, this base invoice, if we go back to our data model, which is our invoice model data model, let me go back to the model mapping and show you quickly. For example, invoice, now this is my model mapping. In model mapping, you should be able to see that particular invoice base is mapped to which particular data source. I hope that answers your questions. If not, you can directly contact me and I should be able to answer, in more detail.
And the final question by Suzanne is there a possibility to show subsum to be forwarded to next page at the end of each invoice page? For example, if invoice is 4 pages long, having a cumulative total at the end of each page and an additional amount brought forward at the top of each page, starting with page page 2.
So to answer that question, while designing these reports, you have an option in Word to somewhere in the layout or to repeat certain header rows or certain things like header and footer in your report. So as long as your format is defined, and for example, in your report format structure, you have totals fields, wherein you can, all these totals fields in standard design are mapped to already the calculated fields which are present in underlying tables. So if as long as you have your data and totals ready, once you put those sums and totals, subtotals on this format and do these settings about repeating most of those sections on each page, then those sections will be automatically repeated irrespective of how many number of pages you have in your report.
Great. Right. Okay. So there's lots of comments there by Sunnik. Cool. Thank you, Jan. Great session. Aurelian. Good point, Suzanne. It's often a law requirement to display that information. So I think this is a very useful session, and it's the last session of the day. It's been a very long day, and there's a final thank you by Nitesh to say thanks for great session on ER. So I think that's the end of for today. We're going to carry on tomorrow at 6 a.m. tomorrow GMT. Last day tomorrow. Sudnik is asking, how do they contact you? Are you able to share your contact details, Sukrut?
Sure. So let me display my contact details. So you can email me on my this email address, parab.sukrut@hotmail.com. I'm always available on Microsoft Dynamics community. You can search me by my name and you can message me over there, or you can ping me on LinkedIn for any questions you have.
Well, thank you again, Sukrut, for all your help today. Thank you to all the speakers, and thank you, Aurelian, as well, and all the speakers who managed to stay online as well. Let's see who's online still. A lot of people have left, but I can see Alex is still here. Great, thanks, Alex, for your 2 great deep dive security sessions, and Nathan as well. Fantastic technical session for the developers. That was really, really, really insightful. So thank you, everyone. We carry on the final day tomorrow. Get some rest, get your vitamins, and get your sleep, and we'll carry on tomorrow. So thank you, everyone. Sukrut, do you have any final words for everyone?
Thank you, everyone, for staying late and attending these sessions. All great sessions provided by community members, and thank you, Raz, specifically for organizing this event and giving us opportunity to share knowledge with the community. Hope to see you all tomorrow.
Good night, everyone. Have a great weekend, and hopefully see you tomorrow morning.
Thank you, everyone.